What's up, fellow Reddit avoiders? I'm Teak, and today we're going to revisit our boss rush strategy from 3.18. Some minor adjustments were made, and we'll go over those in each of the sections. I'll add some chapters so you can quickly move between them if you want. I just wanted to make a quick note before we get into the juice. We're not really making as much profit as we did in 3.18 due to invitations being a lot less profitable. However, we're still making decent currency per hour, and you'll see that in the profit breakdown section of the video. Something to be aware of before you start this strategy is that the name of the game is speed. It's important to be using a character that can not only move at a decent rate, but can also deal with bosses relatively quickly. I found there's a pretty delicate balance between kill speed and move speed. Since I'm a bit less geared than the last league, I opted out of wearing Queen of the Forest this time around, and instead I decided to kill the boss faster. Definitely worth it when you run into mods like Life is Extra ES and Bonus Life. Even things like extra resist and cannot inflict exposure can really be a pain depending on the build. So the faster you kill the boss, it actually makes up for a lot of time overall. First and foremost, let's talk about which maps you'll be running and which maps you'll be favoriting. Our priority list is let me put on D&D here. Our priority list for maps is basically number 1, can we run it quickly enough that it doesn't hinder our profit per hour? Number 2, is it connected to a map we can easily sell for profit or use for future projects? And lastly, is the boss going to be a pain? In the first set I chose to run Park because it's connected to Crimson Temple, and as everybody knows, Crimson Temple farming will always be a thing as long as Apothecary drops there. Park is a pretty great map because it has a really linear layout, and the majority of the time you can find the league mechanics right smack in the middle or pretty close to the boss or entrance, which is great for pathing around. The second set I ran was Waste Pool, and that name is really fitting. The boss is super annoying because she takes time to spawn, and she can also debuff you with stacking versions of curses like Enfeeble and Temporal Chains. Killing her fast is basically mandatory, and I wouldn't really recommend running this setup, but I hate myself, so I tried it anyway. Another set I considered was Ashen Woods, and you'll find that up here. Ashen Wood is connected to Dunes as well, and Dunes is a pretty popular map. The downsides to that map is the boss can blend well with monsters. It's pretty easy to find the boss, but sometimes you just don't notice the boss there, so I'll probably end up trying it since it's connected to Dunes, but for now I decided to opt out of it. I also thought about running Mesa since it's a really popular layout and the boss is quick to reach. However, it's not connected to any notable maps. Same thing goes for trying to farm maps connected to Mesa. The ones surrounding it on the Atlas are pretty horrible for bossing, so I wouldn't really recommend it. So the easiest maps to sell right now are Crimson Temple, Dunes, Mesa, potentially Villa, and also it seems like people like running Atoll, which it's not a bad map. It's just basically a giant figure 8, and a lot of the league mechanics spawn in the middle, so it's very, very quick. So we'll move into the Atlas, and I'll go over the adjustments from last league. So last league Alpha? The last league Alva was super high value, but this league she's fallen pretty far from Gray, so I decided to instead invest in Einar in the hopes that I can make some good money with a future strategy I'll go over in another video. If you're looking for just pure profit right now, June missions have the highest sextant value, and that's something to consider when you're deciding what nodes to take on the Atlas. Basically, the master you invest in is purely up to whatever you want to run in the future. I decided to go with Einar, like I said, so I grabbed Hunting Season as well as Animal Companion. You could also grab these nodes here, but I haven't finished out my Atlas tree yet because I'm super lazy this league, so I just decided to leave that out. For 3 points, it's only going to give me 3% chance, which isn't really that valuable considering 2 points here is giving me 4%. So to go over the rest of the tree here, we're taking our usual suspects. We're getting Shaper Elder Guardian maps, we're grabbing the Synthesis map nodes, and we're also grabbing Conquered Conquerors, or the Conqueror nodes. We're going to path through and pick up a bunch of chance for map drops to be duplicated, as well as chance for monsters to drop an additional connected map. Since we're running maps that are connected to the easy to sell maps, these ones are no-brainers and you want to grab as many of those as you possibly can. I also ended up grabbing Etched by Acid just so we could get some more invitations. However, this definitely wasn't anywhere near as valuable as last league, but for 5 points, it's still, I'd say, worth taking. And we'll go over that in the point value breakdown part of the spreadsheet. I also grabbed some quant nodes because I was next to it, and then we picked up just a little bit of increased effect of modifiers since we're pathing through that anyway. The main other things I grabbed is shaping the mountains and shaping the skies because they're pretty valuable for future projects and they're definitely worth taking for 6 points. It also gives us a chance for maps to be 1 tier higher, as well as these nodes here, so we grab those too. Alright, now lastly, I decided to try out both enriched entities just for some extra drops. However, something to note is in the waste pool set, this doesn't actually do anything because the boss can't be duplicated. So this was a total waste, but in Park it was duplicating quite often and it's pretty decent. But you do get the basic currency no matter the boss, so that's, I guess, just something a little extra. I probably wouldn't recommend it. Those points could be pushed somewhere else. It's not really that valuable. And I don't believe that duplicated boss can drop any of the special stuff that we have set up on the Atlas anyway, like any of these Guardian maps or whatever. I've only really seen it from like the main map boss. One of them is considered main and the other one's considered the duplicated version. However, it can drop extra currency. Sometimes it drops some extra uniques. So, you know, if you want a chance at extra uniques or whatever it may be, you can just pick that up. Also, the rarity is pretty much whatever, like that 75% rarity. It's not really worth. And lastly, I decided to grab Trial of Glory because Gift of the Goddess are super valuable right now. So I figured I might as well just grab it. It's pretty quick for me to get through those and it's no sweat. So if I do end up getting a gift, it's just a bunch of extra profit on the map. And you'll see in our point breakdown, it is decently valuable, enough to say that the 4 points are worth spending it on compared to the value of everything else. And that's basically it for the skill tree, so I'm going to swap over to the spreadsheet and we'll go over that quickly. Alright, so the exact same thing I did last time, I broke it down into our sections, so we have our first 108 maps ran with Park, and the second 150 with Waste Pool. There was only 258 in this project because I want to include some other maps and I didn't want to lump it all into one video. And in the next video, we'll compare everything and see exactly what the times are and how our profit per hour is and stuff like that. So I also have our totals and our Atlas point value breakdown. So we'll just go over our profits really quickly, and I include screenshots of all the loot. However, something to note here is that I pruned pretty much all of the uniques. Anything that was basically less than like 10C, I just kind of threw out. Aside from the Malkun, those are around 9C, so I left those in. And I ended up getting 2 over the course, so it doesn't really sway the value of it either way. The only uniques I really included in the end product were the Count's Hearts because they're pretty much like 13, 14C each right now, so I definitely included those. I also pruned out essences because they had nothing to do with the strat, and I decided that the amount of times you encounter them in a place that isn't really awkward to go out of your way to kill them isn't really worth. So we're going to exclude those. Those are not added to the final value. Divination cards, if they're under 3C, 5Z each, they're pruned from the results as well. So even though you see them in the screenshots here, they were not included in the final values. So in our first set, our first 108, we ended up running 108 park maps at 3C each, and they were bought from TFT. We ended up with 95 Crimson Temples and 24 other random T16 maps. Anything below T16 was just purged unless it was a Guardian map. For our Screaming Invitations, we ended up with 4.25 of each Screaming and Writhing, and that brought us up to like 420 Chaos. For our missions, I priced missions based on sextant cost, so you can see just a quick overview of how many missions we got from each set, and you can tell how valuable the node is. Like our Einar missions here were considerably higher than the rest of our missions, and then if we go over to the second side, our Einars again were pretty much higher, but this side, interestingly enough, was a lot closer in comparison than the first side. We got 3 Elder Guardian maps in the first set, which is really low. 3 Shaper Guardian in the first set, which again is really low. 9 Conqueror maps, which seems more or less about right. That's just a little under 10%. And then we ended up getting 5 Synthesis maps. And you can see my price breakdown and why I chose the prices that I did. They were either based on TFT, they were based on bulk prices, or they were based on the Po Ninja prices. For our miscellaneous currencies, I did use Excellence for a little bit of stuff, just because pricing out things individually would have been really expensive, or really time consuming, sorry. So I wasn't going to go like manually price out Chance Orbs and GCP and Vol Orbs and stuff like that. I just left that up to Excellence. So what you see in the raw currency drops is based on Excellence values. The miscellaneous other in that line is basically just invitations, like these divine vessels, the like random fragments. I think I purged most of the fragments that were less than 1C anyway. It would also be Eldritch currency. We have our Kirak reroll currency stuff, and any divination cards that I ended up keeping that, like I said before, were above 3C. Our uniques are on the left here, as well as our tribute to the goddess and gifts to the goddess and stuff like that. And then our high stuff has its own section here because it's purged from Excellence. So in the first set we got 9 contracts. In the second we got first set we got 1 blueprint, and we ended up with 4 chaos worth of markers, which is pretty insignificant, but it adds up anyway, I guess. So we did get 1 special lab, and it gave us a tribute. I skip anything that's not an enhanced lab trial, so that's why I don't include the normal gifts, or the normal whatever the lab token thing, key thing. And you can see my pricing on high stuff on the left side here. Our blueprints are at the top, and then the contracts are at the bottom. Basically anything that's not deception, counter thaumaturgy, or lockpicking is like approximately 1C. So that's what we based our prices on. That pretty much does it for the first half. I didn't get any Cortex here. I didn't get any special drops. I got 1 Exalt, which is kind of weird. And then no Divines. So our profit per map works out to be 12.87, and our profit per hour, since it took 82.5 minutes to both set up and load screen and hide out and run the maps, our profit per hour was just under 6 Divines, just shy of 6 Divines. And then our profit per hour in Chaos is 1,010. And you can see our investment cost here. We grabbed our Park Maps for 3C. We used bindings because they were slightly cheaper than Alch. We used scours for some of the maps that had that were magic. There ended up being 14 in the first set, and we used some Chaos to reroll Reflect because I'm not using an awakened elemental damage with attacks. And we also rerolled Cannot Regen because it's just annoying. And then I also included in the first set 132C worth of Orb of Unmaking to clear the tree, which should be factored in because it's important that I present you realistic values and not just inflated values without considering everything. All right, and if you do want to make a copy of the spreadsheet, you can make a copy. Just go to File and then make a copy. I'm not logged in, so it won't show up. But you can make a copy, and then you can edit the values. If divines change value or whatever, you can edit that, and you can see how that reflects on the profit per map and stuff like that. This will adjust pretty much every one of the estimates, and all of the like revenue, investment, profit. It's all based on this number in this box right here. All right, moving on to the second 150. This was our waste pool set, and waste pool is an understatement. The boss takes about like 12 seconds or 13 seconds to spawn, so it really did impact the time it took. So 122 minutes to complete 150 maps, whereas Park was 82. It's pretty close to similar, but one of the reasons is because Park is a little bit harder to like traverse, and waste pool is really easy to get to the boss. So they kind of equaled out slightly. And same thing goes here. showed my investment. I didn't include Orb of Unmaking because I'm not going to respec the first tree to spec into the second tree. If you want to include that to see what this specific map would be, you can just change this number in this box here to 132 or however many Atlas points you have. We ended up getting another set of Kalam's Heart and Malkoon, which is kind of weird. I got two, one in each set, so that's a little weird. And in this set, we hit way more lab trials. We ended up getting 4. 1 dropped a gift, 2 dropped tribute, and then 1 dropped a dedication, which totals up to 265C. It's actually slightly more now because the price went up to 1.4 divines instead of 1.3 per gift. And tribute is also up about like 2 or 3C. Again, 12 contracts, 1 blueprint, and then 7.9C worth of rogue markers. I just threw that in there anyway. We ended up with 114 Dunes maps, 16 other random T16 maps, and then everything below that was purged. Our Screaming Invitations were just shy of 6, 5 3/4. Same thing with Writhing, and that's based on how many missions we have displaying in the map device. So if I go here, I'm totally basing that on what we started at and what we ended at in terms of progress. That's not based on how many actual ones we had dropped, because that would be slightly inaccurate, and if I ran one more map in this set, like I ended at 27 out of 28, if I ran one more map, that would have been 1 extra invitation. However, that would have skewed the results. So we took just our progress. We didn't actually take, we didn't run enough maps to drop enough to like inflate our values. And then our raw currency here is 268. And then our compass values, or our mission values, sorry. For Elder Guardian maps, you can see 7 dropped. Shaper was 6, Conquer was 6. We also got 2 Cortex in this set, which is really, really nice. Still below what I was getting last time I did this, but I mean, 2 Cortex and 258 maps is not bad. So our total profit per hour there ended up at 6.15 divines, and it took us 122 minutes, so that puts us at 14 chaos per map, just over 6 divines here. So in the total section, I have it averaged out. Our profit per hour total is 6.07 divines. It took 204 minutes, so just a little over 3 hours, right? And then we took over our averages. Our average time a map was based on this time here, and the total maps we did was 47.5 seconds, which is decent. I think the park maps kind of carried there a little bit, but it's a relatively decent time. In 3.18, it was more like 28 to 35 seconds of map. I can't remember the exact value, but it was a lot lower, and that's because I had a Mage Blood and I was just overall killing stuff faster and spending less time in the map. And lastly, to go over our Atlas point value. Now, this is kind of an experimental section. I did this last time too, but basically what I'm doing here is I'm calculating the amount of profit we get for our investment on the Atlas tree. So here, for instance, we have 258 maps ran. Our synthesis maps were 7 core synthesis and then 2 cortex. So we had 9 maps total, which brought us to 470C. So this cost 9 points on the Atlas tree. And I just realized my thing is on the wrong page. Okay, sorry. I'll fix that in post editing. Anyway, so we had 7 base maps and 2 cortex for synthesis maps. Our point cost is 9, so we calculate our profit per map based on how many chaos we made from it and how many maps we ran, which works out to be 1.82 C per map. So then we can calculate that further by giving profit per Atlas point. So if our profit per map is 1.82, our profit per map per Atlas point is now 0.2C. So every map, we're getting an extra 2C for these 9 points that we invested. Same thing goes for our Elder Shaper. Since they share the node, I'm not going to separate them. They brought us in just shy of 300C, about 6 points. Our profit per map is 1.15C, and our profit per point is 0.19C. Conquer maps definitely carrying the bunch here this time around. and that's giving us almost 0.4 C per map just for having these 4 nodes, these 4 points spec'd in. Etched by acid here is the node that gives us 10% chance to gain an additional progress towards Eater of Worlds. So if you look up here, we had 10.03 total screaming invites. Our possible, if we didn't take Etched by Acid, was 9.1, so that puts us at an extra 0.82 invites. So we factor that in here, and our profit per map on Searing Influence alone, based on our invites, was 4C, and that's not including Eldritch Currency. So that's just from invitations alone. So we got 10.03 of both invites, so we add that together, and that brings us to 4C, exactly 4C, which, actually I think I might have rounded that. And then Trial of Glory, the experimental node here, we got 5 improved trials. It brought us in 277C. It cost 4 points, so our profit per map is just a little over 1C. And our profit per point is 0.27. It was decent. Basically, that's heavily influenced by RNG, though. You know, you could get 10 improved trials, but they could all be the least valuable trial, so it's something to experiment around with. It's easy for me to run. Gifts are in high demand. They sell like instantly, so I decided to do it anyway. And yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to go over. So I plan on testing some more strategies this league, so if you want to follow along my journey through these trying currency times, do please hit subscribe. It helps me out a lot. Every subscriber is more incentive for me to make these videos. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Take it easy.